Welcome to the Authors Hour. My name is Fred Zurm. I represent the Friends of the Chautauqua Writers Center. We are a volunteer organization whose mission is to both support and supplement the official activities of the institution's Writers Center. I will tell you more about the Friends of the Chautauqua Writers Center at halftime between our two poets today. Good, thank you. Philip is letting people in while I'm talking. Please, as I said, if you feel that you are in a noisy environment or might make noise during the middle of a poem, please mute yourself. If there is someone among our 59, that's a new record, 59 participants, that seems to be an intentional troublemaker, I will first mute you and then boot you. I don't think we have anybody like that, but just in case. There will be Q&A. And there are two ways you'll be able to ask questions. Probably the primary way with this many people is to put something on chat. I will also be putting some information about how to get books and things like that on chat. If you really have to talk, you can, under participants, if you click that at the bottom, on the left, you can raise your hand. But I think most of it should probably be by chat with this size group. Okay, I think that's the information at this point. So I'm going to introduce our first poet. Born in Rochester, New York, Susan Dorsky Nussbaum received her BA from Smith College and her law degree from the University of Buffalo Law School. Her poetry collection, What We Take With Us, released by Coffeetown Press in 2014, was a finalist in the Brittingham Pollock Prize competition. Her second poetry collection, Open Wide the Eye, was released June 1st, 2016 by Coffeetown Press. And her third book, Alive in This Place, was released July 1st, 2019, also by Coffeetown Press. She's on a roll. Her work has appeared in numerous national publications, and she has presented her work in solo public readings in many communities in the Northeast and Florida. She says she is forever grateful to the Chautauqua writers community for the mentorship and inspiration they have provided over the years and the unending encouragement they have given her in pursuing her dream of publishing her work 3 times now. Great. I give you Susan Nussbaum.
Thank you so much. Am I shown in the screen? Yeah, okay.
If you're in speaker view, if you're still in the gallery view, switch to speaker view so you can see Susan as she talks.
Okay. Thank you, Fred. And it's just a pleasure to be here and see all my old friends from so many different parts of my life. It's terrific. And thank you to the Friends of the Chautauqua Writers Center. And it's just a pleasure to be here on Zoom, which is, this is a first for me to be reading on Zoom. I just want to say that I'm thrilled to be reading with Phillip Turman, who is a good friend and a mentor. And he's just released this fabulous book, which happens to be right on my desk. I got it last week and I recommend it. Go right out and buy it. At any rate, I'm going to start my stopwatch here. Sorry. All right. Good. I'm going to read some old poems and some new poems today. And the first 6 are from a little collection, I call it a folio, of poems that I have compiled reflecting my life during the pandemic. And hopefully you'll be able to relate to some of the experiences and feelings that I've had during this really uncertain time. The collection, I'm not reading the whole collection, but the collection is about 12 poems, and I'm just going to read a few of them. The first 6 from the folio I will read, but the collection itself is called Happy New Year 2020, a COVID journal. Year 2020. Tonight is New Year's Eve, and I've invited a few gray singles like me to come for some stew and cinnamon ice cream, and maybe a sip of Prosecco to ring in the new year. And what will the new year bring? What are this morning's news? A viral plague lurking in the wings, attacks on a rabbi and his congregants, the murder of worshipers in a Texas church. Will we survive these ruptures? Contagion abroad, divisions among us, and weapons of hatred turned in against ourselves. How can I reclaim my bright-eyed faith in my country, where I believed every culture was folded into an aromatic stew pot and savored, the spices, the textures, the music? Send me a message, O Father Time, a hopeful sign, to reassure me that tomorrow we'll recover from this affliction, this decay. Be forward, old man, and in return, I'll rejoice in the birth of a new year and gratefully offer up my future to you. It's a small gift, but it's all I've got. Distancing. Virus invades lungs through lips and nostrils. Wherever a hand, a cheek touches a knob, a railing, a cup, in a sneeze, a cough, a laugh, a kiss. This world already fractured, I move farther away to avoid contagion, chat in prolonged phone conversations, long distance or not. Learn to find what I love hidden away in cupboards as I clean house, a shawl from Italy, a silver heart on a chain, a missing button. Now I take walks alone, not lonely, but part of a familiar landscape. An oratorio of March birds, cardinals, robins, woodpeckers hiding in waking elms. Locust pods rattling in the wind, waiting to burst. Shoots of crocus lifting themselves through the mud where snow once obliterated the garden. My extended family miraculously enlarged, while this tiny parasite, distant cousin, estranged from the clan, crowds in to get a closer hold, insinuates itself through every pore, terrifying in its persistence. Keep my distance. This will have a couple of references that I should explain to you. One of them is to the Hebrew word dayenu, and it's a word that comes in a song at our Passover Seder, and what it means is, it is sufficient, or it is enough. And the other thing is the prophet Elijah, who always appears at our doors at the Seder, and the prophet Elijah is the symbol of hope for the future. Passover Zoom. Tonight, I tune into a family Passover Seder, this year on my iPad. And remember how this night is different from all other nights, and how our people escaped tyranny and a host of plagues by trekking through the desert for 40 years, no end in sight. We arrive in little squares on a screen, portraits of the people I love, who interrupt each other trying to get a word in, voices sometimes electronically garbled, but cherishing the view more than the words, each one enduring a common desert trek, thirsting for the comfort of touch, the safety of closeness, a return to a life where tomorrow can unfold into eternity and uncertainty can shrink to nothing. We're reminded of spring, our plates filled with the greens of rebirth. We taste the bitter tears of suffering, the sweet fruit of hard work, singing of gratitude for the sufficiency of our lives, even in the face of hardship. Dayenu. As the story ends, Elijah appears at our doors, and we let him in. Chalk work. Scribbled on the sidewalk in large pastel letters, "Be well," a rainbow arcing below the words. Gift of a homebound child, boredom relieved by distraction, and the pleasure of showing kindness to neighbors and stir-crazy walkers like me, searching for unfamiliar sidewalks to explore during the pandemic. In the pebbled cement beneath the message, decades of hopscotch grids, grooves worn smooth by jump ropers, portraits of schoolmates and pets drawn by dozens of children long gone, saved from the tyranny of confinement by creating playworks and works of art like this one. Children exhilarated by the wash of fresh air, the heft of fat chalk in their fists, rainbows coming off on their hands as they choose their favorite colors for the crooked lines in block letters, careful not to smudge with their elbows this expression of goodwill, connecting viewer and artist in an uncertain world. Breathing. I march to shouts of protest in memory of George Floyd and thousands before him, whose breathing was stifled by the knee of hatred and air squeezed from lungs by noose and chain and boot, by the artillery of bigotry pressed against chests to immobilize, dehumanize. With every free breath, I'm aware I've escaped the stranglehold of COVID lurking in the sweet air. Yet I suffer, gasping from a virulence more insidious, more suffocating, sickened by my complacency, the need of complicity planted firmly on my trachea. And the last one in this group, life as is. I can't quite recall what life was like before. Did I invite dinner guests, visit the kids? Was I afraid to fly, to catch the flu? Was I happier then? On pause, the past is distanced into imagination. Will tomorrow bring the new normal, life forever plagued by separation and fear? Or will I embrace my neighbors, unmasked, to celebrate the beauty of a world repaired and breathing free? Now it must be enough to have shelter, a trove of unread books, semi-reliable Wi-Fi, and the solidity of cement beneath my sneakers. Enough to discover that overnight, 2 rows of stately horse chestnut trees have ignited their rosy torches, illuminating both sides of Bryant Street. And from a bell tower nearby, a reassuring resonance, praise for the persistent passage of time. So that's the end of that group. And now I'm going to read some from, okay. What is that noise? Pat pen? Oh. Oh dear, okay. Well, she should be admitted. Phil, will you admit that? Are you doing that? Anyway, the next group is from my 3 books, and I will read a couple from each book. And the first one is from my first book called What We Take With Us. And I'm going to read the first poem, which is called Psalm, and basically it's a love poem. Psalm. Without a word, you did this for me. Gathered my whites, my darks, spot cleaned my green sweater, sorted my underpants, underwire bras, nightgown, separated out the gray-soled gym socks, removing crumpled tissues from my black jeans, turning them inside out, set aside my red blouse with the pearl buttons for special attention. All the while, I wrote poems upstairs, listening to the whoosh of hot water, the tumbling of snaps and zippers. Heard you shake out the wrinkles, your wedding band clinking on the folding table as you straightened my shoulders, buttoned my fronts, felt for dampness, tenderly pressing cottons and silk with your dry hands as the scent of cleanliness released from the dryer drifted up the steps. You let me be. My throat catches in gratitude. My things laid out on our bed, folded square, crotches tucked, cups nestled inside one another, bleached soles matched in pairs and rolled, arms bent at the elbow, hugging my spotless torso. Without a word, all accounted for, shining. Dear, I've got to get my stopwatch, excuse me, it's going off. Okay, stopwatch. Okay, we're good. I'm going to read the next one because it's a Chautauqua poem, and I don't think I've ever read it in public before, but you will notice that there are some structures that are referenced in this poem, a few of them, and one of them is the old Chautauqua Amphitheater. And now, of course, it's been replaced by a wonderful replica, beautiful and practical and comfortable, and I'm pleased with it. But this poem was written before 2014, so I am talking about the old one. It's called Encounters, Chautauqua, New York. If I hadn't ventured out, I wouldn't have been walking outside the wooden amphitheater, wouldn't have been lured inside through an open gate to be shaded by the aged planked roof, timbered rafters of the structure built only a few years after Brahms designed the architecture of his first piano concerto, the work now being rehearsed by an orchestra and a lanky Peter Serkin at the piano. If I had chosen a nap, as my body now seems to require, I wouldn't have noticed how these two huge structures of another age shape their lofty arches, motifs and symmetries, the gradually descending tiers. Or remembered another immense concert hall where my child self listened enraptured to Serkin's father playing the same concerto, orchestral chords rising into the vaulted blue ceiling, where the crystalline notes of the cadenza hung suspended from a grand chandelier. I might not have envisioned my mother stacking Brahms intermezzi on the spindle of the mahogany Magnavox in the parlor just off the vestibule of a white pillared frame house on Vassar Street. And I couldn't have noticed this group of Amish girls in blue homespun chattering past the entrance, leaving behind one girl, entranced, who tilts her white bonneted head and listens. I'm going to read one from this book, Open Wide the Eye, and it's called Earphones. Here I am plugged into my iPhone, cleaning drawers and closets, while Rubinstein on the cloud plays Chopin nocturnes, one after another. I throw out your old credit cards and prescriptions, your driver's license and scribbled passwords, coming across your rimless glasses, which I should donate to poorly sighted people, but can't let go, seeing them so clearly on your face as you turn and lift your head in the mirror. Who can say the dead never return, when here is Arthur Rubinstein erect at the Steinway, fluff of white hair undisturbed, even as he tackles the most difficult arpeggios, his fingers singing each haunting melody by Frédéric Chopin, dark-eyed and gaunt, who is here weeping through a tiny wire into my ear for his lost love, his lost homeland, his sighs, keening across the keyboard. And here you are, your spectacled face with me all day. And the last two, I'm going to read two from this book, Alive in This Place. The first one is a Sarasota poem, Mockingbird. Under a bronze Buddha's eye, too many cell phone talkers, crowds at the koi pond. As I hurry from the botanical gardens, I'm stunned by the song of a plum-gray bird perched on a palm branch, trilling a nigun like a cantorial soloist. Catching his beat of eye, I whistle an improvisation into the air, changing pitch and rhythm with each phrase. And bubbling from his feathery throat, a stream of my own fragmented song, a cantillation winding itself into my ear, my tune becoming beautiful because he heard and answered it. And the last poem is called Anthem, and it's inspired by the Psalm 118. This day, this glittering, overflowing day, holds me in its architecture, the texture of its hours, rooms bursting with bric-a-brac, living portraits, woven landscapes humming with sound waves. Each step along its hallways, each minute echoes the tolling of its decay, the measure of fullness in slow dissolve. Yet how insistent is the light that streams through windows, casting indelible lattice patterns on the carpet. How enticing the shadows tilting from the angle of the door frame, pouring secrets into the cup of my ear. The watercolor garden I planted yesterday blurs behind me in the distance. I live between the gold-pink streak of rising and the mauve smoke of resting. This day is my home, and I'm glad in it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Susan. You can unmute if you want to applaud that way, or in the lower right, you can send a reaction, or you can send something.
Thank you all for coming.
Okay, great.
All right.
Two things. If you could mute again, that would be great, because then we won't suddenly see you did this. I believe if I click the right click, Susan, are you saying your book?
I am. I'm seeing my one book, and then the other ones are above it, I think.
Okay.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
on chat, I've also sent this information in the form of links. Okay, so you can do it that way. other thing I sent you on chat was information about the Friends of the Chautauqua Writers Center. I'll say a few things, but you can also go online if you have trouble retaining things, as I've just said once. The Friends of the Chautauqua Writers Center sponsors several activities, even more when we're not in a COVID mode. But even during this time, we have the author's hour every Thursday. So for instance, next week, poet Carol Jennings, and I'm embarrassed to say poet Fred Zurm will be presenting their poetry. Thank you. So you can feel free to come back. Would be great. We got up to about 63 or 64 participants. I might have to upgrade my Zoom account. The other thing we sponsor on Sunday evenings at 5 o'clock is open mic. People are welcome to come and share what they've written, or they can just come to listen. That's at 5 o'clock. The Zoom link is also on that web page that if you go up in chat, you can see that I've left there. If you are a writer, you might want to keep in mind that the annual writing contest sponsored by the Friends, their deadline is August 2nd. Once again, if you go on the website, you can click a link to Submittable. That's how they take submissions. If you join the Friends, you can submit for free. If not, it's $5. Okay. The other thing, and this is coming up very soon, we have the Robert Pinsky Favorite Poem Project that Georgia Court started, and Robert Pinsky, the year that Robert Pinsky visited. I think this is our 12th, I believe, annual Favorite Poem Project. If you have a favorite poem, published poem, not by you or a family member, you can apply to read that. The reading is on July 22nd, a Wednesday at 5 o'clock. The deadline is Wednesday, July 22nd. So it'd be great if you entered and we could have a nice full event the way we've had a nice full reading today. Let me introduce you to our next poet, Phillip Turman. He's the author of 6 books of poetry, including Our Portion, New and Selected Poems. His new collection, This Crazy Devotion, well, it's actually out. It was scheduled to be out August 1st, but Philip, I believe it is presently available. His poems appear in numerous journals and anthologies, including some biggies here, the Poetry Magazine, the Kenyon Review, Poetry International, and the Sun Magazine. He's co-founder of the Chautauqua Writers Festival and was the poetry editor for the Chautauqua Journal. A professor of English at Clarion University, he has collaborated with other artists, including composers, painters, and sculptors, and often performs his poetry with the jazz band, the Barkeyville Triangle. More information can be found at www.phillipturman.com. And I'll put that up on chat in just a moment. Let's welcome Philip. Take it away.
Wow. How you all doing? Good? Thank you, Susan. That was a wonderful reading, and it's such a pleasure to read with you. We've known each other for quite some time, and just always nice to read with a friend and a fellow poet. So thanks, Fred, too, for bringing us together. Can you hear me okay? Oh, all right. Yeah, okay, all right. So this is my book, and I want to thank Larry Moore, who I believe is somewhere on the screen, for the publisher and editor of Broadstone Books. So I just I'm delighted with it, and with Broadstone Press, and it's just wonderful, very lovely. I'm going to read a couple poems from each of them. There's 4 sections, and they're fairly self-contained. So I'll read maybe a couple poems from each section, just to give you a taste of the book, so that you will afterwards you'll go ahead and order the book, because you were so delighted by these sections. Well, I'm the son of a used car salesman, so I have to, show my my past. This one is called, it's actually about my present future. It's about actually my daughter. It's dedicated to her, who we adopted from China. And the poem is called Dear Li Po, who was a wonderful, as you may know, famous Chinese poet of the early Chinese history, about 700. So it's kind of a letter called Dear Li Po, dedicated to my daughter, Miriam Shinshu Terman. Dear Li Po, I hope this finds you in good health, as vigorous as you were when I last saw you. Remember? We were together in that odd place, mostly dark and misty, and there were peonies involved, and you were sporting your bright red shirt with the gold buttons. I never wondered who dressed you. And you were reigning in that small red armchair I too sat in as a child, the one I brought back from my parents' basement, the leather seat a little torn. It's true, when I first laid eyes on you, in that obscure room, and you still had your baby fat, you were holding a cookie in your hand and jabbering, which unsettled me into a unfamiliar calm, and what with your round face, I thought of the laughing Buddha, or some kind of Dalai Lama. Remember how once, when we journeyed so far from that place, and you sat on a towel on the sand, you suddenly pointed at the empty blue sky, and I looked up into the enormous silence, and a bird appeared. Li Po, wherever you are now, I want to know if you can still hear the sky's music before anyone else. I'm told that you're a crazy drinker, a real dabbler, an extreme example, like your father, of irresponsibility. Li Po, remember when you called me Gandhi? I thought in respect, but now I know in mockery of my stiff wisdom, my serious sentimentality. I hope you don't wander like your namesake, or like your father's people who travel endlessly, with nothing to help them survive but words. We built pyramids together. Remember when I made you repeat letters after me so we could speak the same language? It was when I carried you in my back in the dark, all the way to the water. Li Po, shall we embrace the reflection of the full moon? If you know Li Po's story, there's the myth that he died by seeing the full moon reflected in the water, and he had to jump in to embrace it. So I thought I'd make a reference to that. Anyway, the next poem I want to read from this collection is, for the first part, is I got a call from a woman who worked at a hospital and was a nurse, and basically the poem is kind of a transcription of that call. I think somebody wants to be admitted into the wing. Should we? I hate to leave anybody out of this. So this is called All Her Life. So it's in the voice of the caller. You don't know me. I'm a palliative care nurse. Do you know what that means? I work with patients who are dying. And I received an odd request. You know, when some are dying, they get a last wish. Well, this woman's last wish, I hope you don't mind this strange call. Her last wish is, all her life she's written poetry. And now her cancer has spread, and she always wanted to know, I hope you don't mind, from someone. I got your number from the university. I asked someone who could judge what was good poetry, and they gave me your number. If her poetry was good, if she would have been a real poet. She'll be moving into hospice soon. Might you mind looking at a few, just a few, poems and tell her if you think she was good enough, that she would have made a good poet? This morning she showed me a picture she drew many years ago, she said, of a child. Perhaps it was her? writing in the center of a round table before a bouquet of flowers, roses, I think. That was what she'd have wanted for the cover if she was able to have a book of her own. A book of her own, I remember her saying. And then her face flushed a little and her eyes looked away. So I'll do one more poem from this section. I'm sure you all remember the Tree of Life Synagogue, 2018, October 27th in Pittsburgh. We live about an hour from Pittsburgh and know some folks that attend the synagogue. And I've gone to the synagogue in the past as well. Those of you who are Jewish will know this, but for those of you who are not, a minyan is the term we use for a service. We can't have an official service unless there are 10 members of the congregation that are there. So this is called a minyan plus one, and we may remember that there were 11 that were killed in that terrible tragedy. So this is called a minyan plus one. It's like if someone asks, how many went to the synagogue today? How many did you have a minyan? And we had a minyan plus one. Usually that means more than a minyan, metaphorically, and that's a good thing. This refers back to the story of in Genesis of Abraham arguing with God about destroying Sodom and Gomorrah. So that was the Torah portion of that service. A minyan plus one was taken from us on the Shabbat, the most joyous of the holidays, the only holy day even God himself celebrates, the emulation of Eden, the day of completion. Before they could perform the service, before they could take their seats and begin the prayers, before the ark opened and the Torah revealed, before they could rise and sway and chant their portion, the book opened like wings in their steady hands, though they knew the blessings by heart. I didn't know them, but I knew them. In the way we know those raised, no matter where we originated, in the same beliefs our ancestors inherited all the way back into those mysterious origins, those stories of creation and exile, of miracles and complicated kings, of commandments and wisdoms. Welcome the stranger, spread across the millennium. We suffer the same persecutions, celebrate the same triumphs, chant in the same order the blessings, hour after hour, generation after generation, Torah portion after Torah portion. Before that week's Torah portion, a minyan plus one was taken, when they would have once again heard the story of when Abraham, our first patriarch of chutzpah, approached and argued with the Lord, "Will you sweep away the righteous with the wicked?" And God answered, "For the sake of 10, I will not destroy it." And so, as on other days, on that day, he did. He allowed the wicked to sweep away the righteous. And when the Lord had finished speaking with Abraham, he left and took a minyan plus one. And Abraham returned home. All right. Are you still with me? I'm looking at the screen. All right. This is the second section. The first section kind of is contained with poems about writers and things like that. And the second section is all about my mother. My mother, who wouldn't let me have this book without a section devoted to her completely. The section is called Of Longing and Chutzpah. And I'll read a couple poems from that. All right. My mother, it's sort of autobiographical in the sense that it goes in chronological order. So Of Longing and Chutzpah, and the first poem I'm going to read from that is called Mouth to Mouth. Let me admit Stan Green's son here. Okay. Mouth to mouth. At the pool, the drowning man saved, lying stock still on the deck, suddenly my mother loosens my grip and surges through the swarm of dripping suits and leans over his enormous body, tips his head to the side, pinches his nostrils. His chest, her chest tenses with air. She seals her mouth over his mouth, and, like God breathing into Adam, releases all of her breath into this stranger, and I am full of anger and longing, and he gasps and he spits, his eyes opening, the crowd stepping back and gawking at my mother, who is hovering, and he rises. Okay, so that was that. The second poem I want to read from this section is, my phone's ringing, sorry about that. My mother cuts my hair. To save money, my mother leads me to the bathroom, sits me down on the toilet, flashes the rusty scissors in the dim light, the honeymooners audible from the next room. She snips until I protest, then she snips some more, sculpting me into the straight A student, the boy who helps around the house, the boy she wants to be a mensch and marry a Jewish woman, but doesn't forget about his mother, building her a home for her declining years, and when the time comes, lights a candle and recites the Kaddish on her yahrzeit. Snip, snip, snip. All right. So the next section of the book is called Devotees, and the book is called This Crazy Devotion. So it's all about different poems of characters who are crazy devotees. And I thought this might be appropriate because we're in this period of arguing and discussing whether schools should be open face-to-face or online, and this is about my daughter when she was in elementary school and going to the bus when there were, when we had a bus. It's called The Sentinel. As the mythical yellow bus slows down on Scrubgrass Road in the early dark and December frost, to gather in once more our child and haul her off into the world that for each of us is a separate mystery, the very last image she will glimpse as she turns around one more time before rushing up the steps and hurrying toward the one seat in the back to bury herself into her own private music, is your body under the porch light, coffee cup warming your hand, how you waited like a sentinel every school day dawn, dutiful until the very last moment of her departure, and in some fleeting moment of her adulthood, in the midst of some confusion or loss or triumph, your attention is what she will remember. All right, I'm gonna do, since I did so many poems about my mother, I'll do a poem for my father, so he doesn't feel left out. He was a used car salesman, as I said, and I imagine what would happen if he was interviewed on NPR. They don't really interview used car salesmen. So in this poem, they do. It's called My Father's Radio Interview. If it could have been scheduled, he would have discussed the theories he developed of selling used cars. It's an instinct, he would have said to the schlemiel host of the local NPR station. It's a lot like gin rummy. Never speculate. Sometimes you're dealt a good hand, but more often it's a foot. Elaborating, he quotes Shakespeare. TB or not TB? That is really the question. Consumption be done about it? Of cough, of cough. Sorry, that was my dad's joke. He would have rejected the theories of who was born in Grant's tomb and vote for mohair, not dandruff. Imagine 6'4", he would rise, light a cigar, blow a smoke ring, pause, and reveal his golden nugget. Don't smoke. It will stunt your growth. Leaving the studio, he'd pause, turn around and assert, look at me. I could have been 7 feet tall. So I know he's going to sue me. All right. This actually is similar to Susan's poems about the COVID, because it's inspired by COVID and not in a good way, as a warning. It's called Zoom Meeting for Mr. Goldberg. Of course, you know, when you have a Zoom thing like this, it says Zoom Meeting, right? So this is called Zoom Meeting for Mr. Goldberg, for my really great friend, and I'll just read the poem. It speaks a lot about him. Early morning, the only two up, me writing on the couch, Artie coming down the stairs and looking for his keys. I'm off to get some bagels. And I want to come along, but he's insisting I needn't. Stay in, it's cold, you're writing. Why should you schlep? I contending I want to, and it continues like this. Two old Jewish Kanackers, but he was 20 years older. This tug of war we do. I want to go. No, stay. I'll be right back. Like those ancient men at the corner table of Corky and Lenny's delicatessen, kvetching all morning and into the afternoon, because kibitzing is the way they choose to spend their remaining time on earth. And Artie was one of those. He loved to lie on the couch and watch his beloved Yankees, and after Susan asked him to, would refuse to remove his shoes. Why should I? And so we drove to Balthazar, the synagogue of bakeries, and he parked in front of a no parking sign. And when I pointed it out, let them arrest me if they've got nothing better to do. And when we arrived back at the house, they were all up and hungry, and Artie laughing, we did it! We got the bagels! What were we to each other, Artie? Is what I would ask him. I'm the schlemiel, he might say, who dated your sister-in-law after your brother died 10 years already. And there was such a warmth in the word in Yiddish is heimish, comfortable, familiar, cozy in his presence. I forgot he wasn't another brother. Yes, he said again, we did it, Phil and I. We got the bagels. On the ventilator for 2 weeks. The call from Susan. They're taking him off. And a small window for each of us, including Artie, on his hospital bed, masked like an alien. The rabbi reciting the blessing, the confession before departing, bringing atonement. It should be recited with a clear mind, the rabbi said. Artie, did you have a clear mind? If a person cannot speak, it may be said in their heart. Artie, you said it in your heart. It can be recited by both men and women. Artie, you were a mensch. On any day, even the Shabbat. It wasn't any day, it was a Thursday. If a person's children are present, Artie, your children were present. You should exhort them to follow the Torah. Artie, you exhorted them to follow your Torah. What should not leave you alone? We said in our broken words, our farewell. Did you hear us? And at the last moment, all of us in our little windows, including you, Artie, we sang, the Lord is our God, the Lord is one. And we thank the doctors and the nurses, each of us. All right, so the last section is called Garden Chronicle. It's all one poem, 20 pages worth, in different sections. So each section is kind of a self-contained little lyric poem. Some of the lyrics are a little longer than others. I'm just gonna end with one of them. I don't know if I have time if I have time, I'll do one more small one. But this is about bluebirds, and it takes place in summer where we are. Wouldn't we prefer to work among the bluebirds? Early June, late evening, as they build their nests inside their customized box on the arbor of the climbing roses. Companionable creatures, the way these two journey together, weaving their house, avoiding the sparrows. But these endure, roosting their beauty, tracing each other from apple tree to arbor to apple tree. Now, in the gray light of an all-afternoon rain, one taps on the window, interrupting our serious attention to frivolous details, a better model of behavior than Leviticus. We want to hear them. So much music beyond our reach. We want to go out among the stars and become no one again, as we once were, before all this aching. Now that the bluebirds sing over me and our daughter, who, in her last hours of childhood, charges across the just cut field to climb a hay bale, solitary against the horizon, she sits, listening, dreaming. Remember when we had no idea who we were? We still don't. What is this thing, this body, still unformed? What is this pulling inside of us, this beating we count, lying awake, this pulsing we hear, but still don't believe, that will stop any time it wants, without warning, this deepest part of us that decides when it has had enough of us? All afternoon and into the evening we dream that way. And what would we do afterward if a day suddenly opened up, every hour of it, dawn to dusk? It's ours and all our longings. Will we finally sort them out? This one from that one, unspooling all those knotted strings? I'm going to end with with the last poem in the book, a short poem. I'll end with another poem about a daughter. And when she was young, I'd sort of promise her something and we'd do something and she'd always say, after later? After later? Like, what is like, I don't know what that meant. So this is called After Later. Asks our child, wanting something, whatever that is, beyond in a little while, or sometime soon, or the unforeseeable future. No set time, farther than the horizon, on top of the sky, around the bend, outside this moment we're in, as if later is an hour that you can point to on a clock or a date on the calendar. How will we know when we arrive at after later? Perhaps we're there, according to whatever someone told us before earlier, whenever that was. All those things they've said would happen must surely have occurred, as in when you're older, according to some mysterious measurement my daughter seems to grasp, about that time beyond time, when it will take place, she believes, whatever it was I promised her. Thank you for listening and staying in your little window.
Right. Thank you so much, Philip and Susan. If you want to unmute to applaud, you may do so, or you may use the
by all means, unmute.
lower right. And or you can do chat. Oh, okay.
Oh, this Crazy Devotion, Broadstone Books.
Right, and if you go up on chat, you'll get the links to different things, Susan's books, Philip's books. I wanted to thank them so much for, well, the combinations that poetry does, the mundane and the metaphysical, the humorous and the profound. I think you're both very adept at doing that. And we've had one sale in chat. I see Pat Aderbach bought it. Okay. Time for Q&A. You can either send something in chat, or if you go to participant, you should have the ability to raise a hand in the far left. So we'll see if I can find either any chats.
You have a hand up.
Okay, for some reason I'm not getting the hand. You are? Can you see who it is, Philip?
James Paul. He doesn't have it. He's muted though.
Okay, you can unmute yourself. Okay.
He's trying to speak, I think, but he's muted. Oh, there.
What's the name again?
Maybe I misheard it, but how does Leviticus tie in with the bluebirds?
Well, I'm kind of being blasphemous there. I'm saying that they're a better model of behavior than Leviticus. So it's kind of in that moment, it's the nature over the biblical injunction. Leviticus is, it's a book full of laws and kosher dietary laws, and you can't mix cotton with wool, and you can't sleep with this person or that person, and you can't do this and you can't do that. And it's wonderful. I teach the Bible as literature, so I love the book. But it's a great source of celebration and criticism and all kinds of things you can do with it. So I was sort of saying that this beautiful moment of these bluebirds was right now. I wanted to be outside and not at my desk poring over Leviticus. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
Sure. I mean, I enjoyed the references you made
Oh, thank
to
you.
the Bible and Torah and Yiddish very much.
Thank you. Because they're not all, I might get kicked out of some synagogues for some of those references. But, to be a good Jew, you have to kind of go both ways. Or more than two. Right, Pat?
Any further questions, either by raising your hand and participant or by typing
My
something?
brother has a question there. He's back down there. Oh, no. Marvin has one.
Okay. I just think it's such a talent that you and Susan have to be able to take little bits of a life experience and make it into something that has so much more meaning by the words you put around the experience. And I applaud you both for your ability to do that.
Thank you, Marcy.
That's very sweet. I think that's what we're trying to do, Susan. What do you think?
I think so. We're trying to communicate.
I think you both succeeded, very much so. Any other questions? Philip seems to be able to spot hands raised that I'm not spotting, or on chat.
I have a question.
Okay.
This is Stan. I can't
Come
figure
here.
out how to raise
Yeah.
my hand. But, I have a question for both Susan and Phil, which is, let's see, I'll ask it this way. Does the writing of poetry help you get through this, or does it help you, is it helping you get through this madness we're living in right now, especially the lockdown aspect?
I can answer that just briefly, that definitely this form of self-expression lets me get a lot off my chest. And it also it makes me feel productive. But the other part of it is trying to communicate what I'm feeling to other people and maybe striking a note that they're feeling too. So there are two reasons to do this, but definitely it's getting me through this very, very lonesome time.
For me, it just gives me more time. We're all isolating and sheltering, and I have all the time in the world to write, and I have absolutely no excuses. So I'm reading much. I don't have the obligation of. I did teach a summer class for a month, but that's over, thankfully. I feel very privileged during this time because I can dedicate myself to the writing and to the reading, and it also obviously the whole idea of living in a plague surrounding us, and many of us have personal. We all have personal connections in one form or another. Deepens us, and as a writer, I hate to say that's good for a writer. That terrible stuff is good for a writer, but in a way, it is, because you're able to make sense of it a little bit more, because that's what you do. You go and you sit down somewhere and you read poetry, and you read what you love, and you write notes, and you think about the world, and you think about your surroundings and your loved ones, and the news that's happening in the day, and all that stuff plays into it. And this certainly does enhance and deepen what comes out. So
From
for me,
from a reader's point of view, thank you, because your writing and our reading your writing or listening to it helps. It certainly helps me, and I'm sure it helps everybody.
Mhm.
yeah, I have a friend who's an artist, and he said, you know, now everybody's living the way I always lived. His studio is in a barn, and my studio is, I have a, you know, where I write, and this is the way artists and writers always kind of live, and unless you know, between jobs, and we have to shelter ourselves. And many of you who are writers know this, or artists know this. So I think, and what people I know are saying, well, you know, I'm beginning to appreciate the garden more. I'm learning to appreciate. I'm reading more. I have friends who now is reading. He just read War and Peace. You know, I don't think he would have done that if he wasn't sheltering. So I think it's realizing we don't need as much as we used to need. So anyway,
Yes.
I'm more of that.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm learning bird songs in my backyard, and I never would have done that before.
There you go.
Right.
Sheila.
Of course, at this moment, we need all the images we can get that stay in our heads. And one of them from you, Susan, would be the white bonneted Amish girl lifting her bonnet to listen to one of the group who hears the music. That was just wonderful. And Philip, the notion of your used car salesman father being interviewed on NPR, there's no way I can ever forget that. And it just, it was just wonderful and much needed in this moment.
Well, that's the fun of writing, bringing these things together that are normally. Thank you.
Any other questions? You can submit them through chat, or speaking up, or raising your hand. Oh. Okay, well, I'd like to, if there are no further questions, I'd like to thank Philip and Susan one last time. Let's give them a round of applause.
Thank you.
Either through reactions or online. Just a couple things. I want to invite you back next week when Carol Jennings and some guy named Fred Zurm will be reading. If you don't know Chautauqua, lots of you are here because you do know Chautauqua and you know Phil and Philip and Susan through that. But if you don't know Chautauqua, I invite you to go to www.chq.org or to assembly.chq.org. The latter is the platform for all the virtual happenings that the institution is sponsoring. We're on Zoom because we're not officially the institution, but they have lectures every morning, every weekday morning at 10:45, and then again at 2 o'clock. There are lectures from a more religious angle. There are plenty of musical performances and theatrical performances. There's a play available on video the next 2 days. So check that out, please. Check that out. And maybe instead of my being in front of a photograph of the Literary Arts Center at Alumni Hall, I can see you guys on the porch. If Susan and Philip would stay when I end the meeting, we can do a brief talk about how it went and how it can go better in the future. Otherwise, thanks again. Take care. Please stay well.
Thanks so much for coming.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Philip.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Good.